right. Welcome everyone to episode 85 of Faith, Fitness, Joy. My name is Rochelle Renee. I am so excited to be here with you today, especially with this being my 85th episode of Faith, Fitness, Joy. Um, if you're not already, go ahead and make sure that you subscribe and like and follow the podcast and or the blog so you can catch every episode and post whenever they're up and available. Otherwise, you can also join me here on my Facebook page to catch it live if you like. And before we get started today, I just have a couple quick announcements of some things that I've got going that I'm really excited to share with everyone. So first is that right now I'm offering a free 30-day training program, 100% free, super amazing value. It's worth over $1,000. You're going to get 30 days of training for free. And it's going to include access to my free trainer app. It's going to include a nutrition plan. So you'll get everything you need for how to eat while you're doing the 30-day training program, as well as some training classes and access to a Facebook community full of other women and moms that are also working towards their health, wealth, and happiness, and also their mindset. So I got that going on. And also right now I am enrolling for it's called Podcast Like a Pro. It's a 6-week training course to get you all set with everything you need to get ready and launch your very own podcast. So everything that I've learned along the way in having this podcast, including how to hone in on what you want to talk about, your audience, everything that you need to know in terms of the logistics and some of the basics and foundations for starting a podcast, as well as the tech. So it's going to include training on all the things you need to know to be able to record your own episodes, also to make videos and publishing and hosting your podcast. So everything you need to know. So the beauty of this training is that over the course of the 6 weeks, you're going to be doing everything that you need to do. You're basically going to be creating your podcast as you go. So when we're done with the training, all you need to do is pick a date that you want to start publishing your podcast and when you want to launch it. So, and then you can get it out there and get started with your podcast. So it's a really great opportunity. It's a really great price. I will include the link to that in the comments as well as for the 30-day training program if you want to check either of those out. And I will also have the links in the episodes. So just wanted to mention those two things really quick because they are both really great opportunities depending on what your goals are. And if you're interested in getting your own podcast up and running. So with that, today we are continuing our conversation around weight loss plateau, right? I know this is something that if you have not yet, you will at some point in your weight loss journey run into a weight loss plateau. It's something I think a lot of us, that is, like, how do I get past this? Why is this happening? What can I do to, continue making progress forward? So today I'm breaking down how you can break that weight loss plateau. And as I mentioned, we've been talking about this in depth the last couple of weeks. So last week we talked about the biological factors that can be contributing to it. And the week before that, we talked about the psychological factors. So if you haven't had a chance, go check those out because it's really helpful to understand those to really kind of help guide you through what strategies might work best for you in trying to break that plateau. So today we're digging into the actual strategies and different things that you can do to break your plateau. So I'm going to talk about 8 different types of strategies you can try. So first we'll talk about caloric cycling. Second, we'll talk about macro adjustments. We'll talk about intermittent fasting, nutrient timing, things like upping your fiber intake, making sure you're hydrated, and assessing your snacking habits, and then also talk a little bit about supplements. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Um, So, embarking on a weight loss journey can definitely be like a roller coaster ride. There's lots of ups and downs along the way. It's not really like a linear kind of perfect trajectory, if you will, of progress. And as if that's not enough, most of us will inevitably run into the dreaded weight loss plateau. And that's basically where the scale just doesn't only seem to stop going down, but it seems to take on this almost obstinance in the face of your effort. And it can be really discouraging and frustrating. So if that initial progress that we often have when we start on a weight loss journey will give us like that boost of motivation, running into this weight loss plateau can definitely take the wind out of your sails. And there's a number of reasons that they happen. And as I mentioned, we talked about that in depth in the last couple of weeks. And understanding those is really going to help shed some light on where you might want to focus your efforts in terms of using some of these strategies, like which ones you might want to prioritize first. So I've definitely hit a plateau many times over my decades long, pursuit of fitness and health, and working towards attaining my own goals in terms of my physique. And it's definitely one of the most frustrating things I think I've ever experienced in my weight loss journey. And many times it's actually led me to kind of spiral into this little like self-sabotage moments off and on throughout the course of my journey. And that's also led me to gaining some weight back after losing it. And then that had me in this place of just wanting to throw my hands up. And a lot of times when this has happened in the past, my initial reaction was always to just like go harder. I got to do more. I've got to work harder. I got to cut more calories. I got to burn more calories. And little did I know in doing that, I was actually just digging the hole deeper for myself and making it even more difficult for me. And there's a number of reasons for that, and that especially affect women in particular because of the difference in hormones. But that's kind of a story for another time. And I did touch on that a little bit in some of these other episodes. But one of the reasons I wanted to do kind of this little mini series, if you will, that I've been talking about is to help you kind of help prevent you from running into this, like getting super frustrated and going into that self-punishment mode that I did, because it doesn't really help you. It just kind of makes everything worse. And it can actually exacerbate some of the things that are actually causing your plateau if you don't really understand what's causing them. So I would just encourage you, if you are experiencing a weight loss plateau, to just take a second, pause, and really go back to some of this information if you're not familiar with it. And just try to understand what's happening with your body and see what your body might be telling you, because there's some clues there that can help you with moving forward with this in a way that's going to get you back on track to progress versus what I've done and learned the hard way in the past of, making the whole situation kind of worse. So as I mentioned, going into some of these factors is going to give you a better idea of where to focus your efforts moving forward. So let's look at some of the strategies that you can try based on these different factors that you think might be at play in your particular situation. So the first one is caloric cycling. Now, one of the reasons for hitting plateaus in the first place that we talked about is that your body will kind of like adapt to a certain level of caloric intake. So let's say, I think it's kind of a generally understood rule of thumb that you have to be in some amount of deficit to lose weight, right? So that's mostly, for the most part, when we start off on some sort of weight loss effort, that's what we're doing. So your body gets used to that, like sort of base level amount of calories that you're eating as part of whatever diet or nutrition plan you're doing. And as a result, there will get to be a point where it will adapt to it, and then it will start to resist your efforts because it's trying to hold on to your stores, if you will. So incorporating caloric cycling, this is basically where you alternate between higher and lower calorie days, or you're kind of cycling what you're eating during the week. And it can help rev your metabolism back up to where it's kind of going back into that fat burning mode. And one of the reasons for that is because you're basically trying to get your body into this state of sort of guessing at what you're doing and not being used to or being able to like anticipate a certain base level of intake, in which case it's kind of like tricking your metabolism. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. One is to simply increase the deficit that you're eating in every couple, like maybe 2 to 3 days a week. So let's say, for example, that you're generally eating in a deficit of 1,900 calories a day based on, your exercise level, your activity level, and, having understood your base metabolic rate, that 1,900 calories is where you can be in a deficit without like overdoing it, so to speak. So let's say that's where you're at. One way that you can do caloric cycling with that is to dip down to say 1,700 calories 2 or 3 days a week, and see if that doesn't kind of shake things up for you and get you back to where you're starting to see that scale move again. So doing that for a few weeks to see what happens is one thing you can do. And you might also want to add, in doing that, you might also want to add 1 day a week or every couple weeks maybe, where you're eating at your maximum caloric intake. So basically the point at which you're meeting your needs and you're not in a deficit, or even a little bit above it. And one of the ways you can do this is with like a single meal. Some people call them cheat meals. I like to call them treat meal. Tomato, tomato, I suppose, but it's something you can do every week or every couple weeks. There's actually a number of reasons it can be beneficial. One, it can kind of help you keep your sanity, right? Like, sometimes, especially in the beginning of your weight loss journey, we all kind of get into that burn of like just wanting something that's like off limits, right? So there's that, but also that spike in calories every 1 or 2 weeks can be just enough to kind of rev your metabolism back up. Because again, the idea is kind of trying to throw your body off track a little bit so that it gets out of that adaptation and resistance to letting body fat go, kind of a mode that happens. Another approach you can take with cycling is to use carb cycling. So you can do like a lower carb and a higher carb cycle every week. And so this is something that you would integrate if you're using like a macro tracking type of approach for nutrition. So with this approach, you could take 2 to 3 days a week where you're eating in a lower carbohydrate, or there's different ways of doing it. There's some where you go like lower carb, high carb. There's other cycles where you're doing like a low, moderate, and high. So you can look into that. I also have an episode that I talked pretty in depth about macro tracking and how to get started with that and what it is. So there's a little bit more information in that episode if you want to check that out. But that's a good way to also kind of change it up. So one example is like you might drop your carbohydrate intake to something like 60 to 80 grams a day on these lower carb days, and then cycling back up. On the flip side, when you're doing this, you also generally want to be increasing your fat intake while your carbohydrate intake goes down a little bit. Generally speaking, you don't want to alter your protein too much, if at all. You want to kind of keep your protein, at that minimum level we've talked about in some of the other episodes around like having a minimum target of protein every day. So anyway, check that out if you want to learn more in the macro tracking episode about doing that. But it's another way that you can try to like kind of do this cycling approach to see if that will help get you out of that plateau. So the second strategy you can try is macro adjustment. So with macro adjustments, the idea is that you're going to like reassess your macronutrient distribution. So if you don't know anything about macros, basically if you're doing macro tracking, you're tracking 3 different categories of food. You're tracking protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And again, go check out that episode. Generally speaking, you have a set calorie limit, and then you take that calorie limit and you break it down into different percentages of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And you stay at that level as long as you're losing, generally speaking, right? So let's say you have your macro targets already set. You've been doing them let's say you've been doing them for like a month and a half, 2 months, and you're losing every month. Either the scale's going down or your measurements are decreasing, and then all of a sudden that stops, right?
So what you would want to do with the macro adjustments, a general rule with macros is before you immediately change them, you want to go another couple weeks at your macro level and see if you don't get a change. And if you don't see any change for another 2 week period while you're still hitting your macros perfectly, then you want to look at changing your ratios. So that's the point where you want to sit down and look at how you want to change them. So you could maybe look at resetting your macros completely. It might be time to drop your calories a little bit more. Like if you've lost a certain amount of weight, it might be time to drop your upper calorie limit and then redo your ratios from there. Another thing may be that it's just a matter of changing the ratios around. Maybe you don't need to dip your calories, but you might want to look at upping protein and decreasing like fat or carbohydrates.
It's too much to get into here, but there's different things you can try in terms of tweaking your macronutrient proportions and ratios to see if that will help get the scale moving in the direction that you want to see it moving again. So the next strategy you can try is intermittent fasting. And this can really be a powerful tool for breaking through plateaus as well. The general idea here is that you have a certain window of time that you eat every day. It's basically like how long you're going to delay the start of eating for the day, like when you're going to have your first meal each day. So one example is some folks that do this, that they will skip breakfast and they'll have their first meal at lunch. And the idea is that you're leveraging the fat burning state that your body goes into when you sleep. So let's say the last thing you eat for the day is at 7 p.m. And then within about an hour or two, your body's going to go into fat burning mode and it's going to stay there for the majority of the time that you're asleep until you eat for the first time the following day. So the longer that you stay in this fasted state, the longer your body could be burning fat. And of course, there's some variation from person to person and body type and things like this, but that's the general idea. So you can look up the different options because there's different types of fasting windows that people use. And again, it can be driven by your body type and your weight loss goals and other things. But for example, one of them is like a 16-8 window where you're fasting for 16 hours and then you eat for an 8-hour window. And then there's all kinds of different variations from there. And then a good rule of thumb is to, follow good nutrition during your eating window. I mean, there's different opinions and different things people do, but it never hurts to continue to aim to make sure you're getting a good amount of protein every day and following a lot of these other things we talk about in this podcast and a lot of my other materials around nutrition. It's just going to help eat and health. So, anyway, like I said, if you go and research this, you'll find that different people do that different ways, but it's a good approach. The other thing here is this is a really good way to help with some of the hormonal impacts that happen, particularly with those two hormones we talked about last time. I think it was ghrelin and leptin, which are like your satiation and hunger hormones. So this can be a good way to help kind of get those in control. Just kind of a little side note there. So the next strategy you can take is nutrient timing. And so the gist of this is just like pay attention to when you're eating and the timing of certain nutrients or certain macronutrients, if you will. So you can look at timing your carbohydrate intake around exercise as one example. That can help you optimize your levels and improve your overall metabolic efficiency. Because after a workout, for example, or before one, it can be helpful to have like maybe a higher amount of carbohydrates than you might have at other times of the day, for example. And then consuming protein post-workout is also going to be really helpful for you. It's going to help with muscle recovery and just kind of that general idea of like feeding your muscles. So the time of day that you work out is going to come into play on this as well. So for example, I work out first thing in the morning and I do my workouts fasted. And then I will usually eat after my workout sometimes. So I've tried to do fasted and non-fasted workouts where like I'll have a protein shake or something like that before I do my workouts. But I actually feel better when I don't work out, when I don't eat anything before I work out. I tend to have a better workout. I tend to have more energy through the workout. And I'm assuming that has something to do with when I'm getting up and doing it earlier in the morning. And there's a whole bunch of other reasons that doing a fasted workout in the morning can be beneficial. Again, it's probably too much to try to talk about here. But you can look more into that if you're curious. And then after I work out, it's usually like I'll have something higher protein, higher carb, and then I, kind of go about my normal eating after that. But the idea is to kind of pay attention to what works for you, and especially your energy levels and how you're feeling based on when you're eating certain macronutrients, and also when you're doing those. So another strategy that you can try is to increase your fiber intake. This is a good rule of thumb regardless of being in a weight loss plateau. I would say you should be aiming to up your fiber intake and hit a certain amount every day, no matter what, like whether you're in a plateau or not. Because a high fiber diet is going to contribute to your overall weight loss efforts in a beneficial way. It helps you feel more full. And it also can, and as a result of that, it can help you reduce your overall caloric intake because you're getting stuff that your body can use, which is going to help your body signal that you don't need anything else. When we eat stuff that's kind of like empty calories, we tend to get hungrier and there's all kinds of hormonal things that are behind that. And your body's not really getting what it can use and what it wants in terms of a nutrition standpoint. So it'll keep signaling you that it's hungry. So fiber can help with that. It also helps to boost your metabolism because it takes more to process and break down things that are higher in fiber. And some of the ways you can do this is to include lots of fruit and vegetable and whole grains in your meals as a way to boost your fiber content. So one of the things I follow is with carbohydrates in particular, I always try to make sure that any carbohydrates I eat in my day-to-day have at least 3 grams of fiber, if not more. I try to find higher fiber. But that's kind of a good rule of thumb to follow. That's a good way to get more fiber in addition to fruits and vegetables. So the sixth strategy is hydration and making sure that you're well hydrated. Because our body will often signal hunger to us when it's actually thirsty. So making sure that you're staying well hydrated is really important to optimize your metabolism and also control your appetite. And it helps with weight loss in a number of other ways. It helps to cleanse your body and your system and move nutrients throughout your body and all of that. So, I mean, it's really good to really drink primarily water if you can get to that point. Ideally, you want to consume at least 100 ounces of water every day, if not more than that. They also say a good rule of thumb is to target drinking the number of ounces of water a day that is like the same as your body weight, but the caveat there is like up to a point. So because 168 ounces is a gallon. If you're 164 ounces, I think it is a gallon. So keeping that in mind. So there's kind of a point at which you don't need to go beyond that. And all that said, I can certainly appreciate how challenging it can be to get to the point of only drinking water and not drinking other stuff. I hated drinking water at the beginning of my own journey. I had to train myself, and it took me about a year, I would say, to get to where I was drinking primarily water. And I actually did a whole episode about this. I think it's like how you can start drinking more water or tips for drinking more water or something like that. So you could check that out and see if that helps you with some ways to make that transition if that's something you struggle with. Like I said, it's something I certainly appreciate because it took me a while to get to the point where I only drink water. I really don't drink much else. Okay, so the seventh strategy is to just look at your snacking habits because this can be a slippery slope and it can definitely be one of these I don't know what you want to call it, maybe like a blind spot for a lot of us.
Because a lot of us fall into this mindless snacking thing, and the evenings in particular, I think, are one of the spots, if you will, that can happen. Work too. I remember like in the afternoons when I was working, like when we still went into the office and stuff, like I would just, I don't know what it was. I would get into this like just kind of munching. And if I was doing that while I was working, I wasn't paying attention to what I was actually eating. So I had to train myself to not multitask while eating because it affects how much you eat basically because you're not paying attention and you're not tuned into your body. So that's one thing to take note of. Also, being mindful of portion sizes. It helps to measure your food out, at least for your snacks in particular, so that you don't like run into this and end up overeating without realizing how many extra calories you're consuming. Nutrient dense snacks are also going to be super helpful with this, like nuts, seeds, Greek yogurt, because it has a lot of protein in it, and avoiding the kind of go-to snacks a lot of us are wanting to reach for, like the chips or the candy bars in the afternoon. Um, Avoid those because they're going to have you end up eating more and not paying attention to how much you're eating. Like I said, many of us have done this, and it's sort of this trap that you can fall into. And I have found too that the healthy snacks can kind of lead to this a little bit as well, because we get in this mindset like, oh, it's healthy, it's low fat, or it's low carb, or it's high protein, or whatever it is, right? And so it leads us to think that maybe we don't need to pay as much attention to how much of it we're eating, or we don't need to measure it out because it's healthy, um, it's low fat or whatever, right? So be mindful of that because you can easily be eating a lot of extra calories that way, um, just from kind of that thinking and that little bit of a trap, I guess, if you will, of it's a healthier snack. So one of the things that's really going to help you with this is learning to connect to your body and your body's hunger cues, because it's going to mitigate a lot of this when you're paying attention to your eating. So don't multitask while you're eating. Don't sit in front of the TV and eat a bunch of snacks. If you're going to have some kind of snack while you're watching TV, pre-prepare it, measure the stuff out, and then bring it in to where you're going to watch TV, for example, so that you don't end up, mindlessly eating the whole bag of whatever it is. Um, Also, doing this with your meals is really helpful as well. Learning to pay attention to your body's hunger signals and satiation signals, and learning the distinction between satiation and fullness. It's very different. And satiation is kind of like it'll feel at first like maybe you could eat a little bit more, but if you give yourself a few minutes, you'll find that you're not hungry anymore. Um, so that's some helpful things to pay attention to. And this is a lot of what I include and help with in the free 30-day training program I mentioned at the beginning, and also some of my coaching programs around this type of eating approach, coupled with the type of food like the nutrient dense foods. It's going to really help you tune into your body's signals more, so you're not like ending up in this overeating type of behavior that a lot of us don't realize that we're doing. So last but not least is look at whether supplements can help you. And this can be all kinds of different things. It can be like whether you might want something to help you with energy levels because maybe that's an issue for you. And there's a number of different things, like supplement wise, that you can look at to help with boosting your energy. It can also help with maybe you're struggling to get adequate sleep and looking at what might help with that. It could also be if you're having some of the challenges around adrenal burnout and stress and some of the things I've talked about in other episodes, as well as what we went into when we talked about the psychological factors that cause us to have weight loss plateau. So addressing some of that stuff through supplements can be really helpful. This is something where you might want to talk to your doctor about what might be good, or just doing some research and finding out what might be the most helpful for you, to give a try and just see how it feels. So It's going to be a little bit different for everyone, but there's a number of things out there that you can do through some of these supplements, like even a B complex supplement, vitamin D supplements, omega-3 fatty acids, and then some other things like 5-HTP or SAMe, ashwagandha. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. And again, do some research on these and also talk to your physician about what might work for you. But there's a lot of different options out there that can help with some of the stuff that's actually causing you to either have low energy or feeling hungrier than maybe you actually are. So, a lot of times we don't realize how much our hormones come into play with this stuff. And when we can get some supplementation that can help balance some things out and just help our body function a little better until we get things back in balance. So check that out because it's another great strategy that could actually be really helpful for you. So as you may have gathered from these recent episodes on weight loss plateau, conquering it really requires understanding what your body is telling you and what's at the root of your weight loss plateau so that you can then try some of these different strategies to see what will get you moving forward in the direction you want to go again. And just remember and keep in mind that sustainable weight loss involves all the parts of us, right? It's not just about our physical body, but it's also our mind and our spirit. I have found that actually, especially our mind is behind a lot more of our challenges than our physical body. And we're kind of taught, it's kind of like an oversight or just something like I don't really hear a lot of other folks talking about the way that comes into play with regard to your weight loss and your overall efforts to change your physique and lose weight. So weight loss or body transformation is very unique to each different person. And like I've talked about in the past, a lot of the stuff out there is not really designed with this in mind. A lot of it is kind of like, here's the approach, and this is what you do, and you stick to it religiously until you get results, kind of a thing. And it doesn't really take into consideration some of those unique differences that people have. And I've seen this as kind of a gap. So that's why I created the Phoenix Rising programs to really help with a lot of this. The nutrition approach, but also through the coaching that I offer. Part of that is going to be working with you to see like where you're at, what's working, what's not working, and what we can change and what we can try to get you where you want to be and get you the results that you want. So I have a number of different options, from group coaching approaches to private one-on-one coaching, as well as just like a DIY kind of self-driven approach if that's what you want too. So check those out. If you want to get a flavor of it, just start with the free 30-day training program. I've got the link in the episode description that you can grab there, or you can check it out on my bios on this page, Faith Fitness Joy, or on my Rochelle Renee profile and my Instagram. So check that out if you want to get a feel for it. Otherwise, you can also book a free transformation session with me. And we'll sit down and we'll get a plan laid out for you, whether it involves working with me or just what you can start doing for yourself to get where you want to go. So I'm offering those for free right now. Those are usually $150 a session. So again, you want to take advantage of that and get in on that. The link is in the episode description to that, or you could just message me on social media and find out how you can get booked. So yeah, use those links. Otherwise, that is all I have for you today. And that kind of concludes our little mini series about weight loss plateau and what causes them and what you can do to break it. As always, I really hope this has been helpful for you and that you had some maybe aha moments or some things that you're excited to try to see if it'll help you get moving in the right direction again, if you've been stuck, or even if you're just trying to get started and you're not sure how to go about beginning with a weight loss program or effort. So thank you so much for joining me today and tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right. Welcome everyone to episode 85 of Faith, Fitness, Joy. My name is Rochelle Renee.